By air and by land, the vaccinated travel lane between Singapore and Malaysia opens, with hundreds crossing the border. How big of a threat is the OMICRON COVID-19 variant, as scientists around the world are scrambling to find out? And after his loss in the Indonesia Open final, Singapore's KEAN reveals what's next for him. You're watching The Big Story. I'm Haryanto Dimana. You can subscribe to the Straits Times channel so you never miss a single episode. There's a real feeling of excitement in the air and on the ground on day one of the Singapore-Malaysia vaccinated travel lane. For the land VTL, hundreds of passengers are crossing the Causeway in buses, heading for long-awaited reunions with loved ones. Here's multimedia journalist Cheow Sue-Ann with more.
A symbolic fist bump marking the start of the highly anticipated land-vaccinated travel lane between Singapore and Malaysia. The Prime Ministers of both countries meeting at Woodlands Checkpoint to witness the launch. For the passengers, it was an early start for them this morning. We're currently standing in front of the very first bus on the Singapore-Malaysia Land VTL. Now, this bus is set to leave the Woodlands Temporary Bus Interchange at 8 a.m. shortly. However, many people were already here as early as 6 a.m. with their luggages, or eagerly anticipating their first trip back to Malaysia in almost 2 years. The bus has a total capacity of 45 and about 42 passengers were seen boarding well before the stipulated departure time. While many were very excited, the processes went smoothly and passengers as well as staff were organised and calm. For these passengers, this day has been a long time coming.
因为我在这边15个月了。 我的儿子差不多不认识我了，所以我要回去哦。就是那一条桥就到我家了。我儿子是3岁了，他刚要懂事的时候啊，就不认识爸爸了。是好彩现在的科技很好，还有的看视频。
Now it's school holiday. That's the reason I say, okay, because need to quarantine, so I just go back during the quarantine time. But I'm very lucky that they opened the BTL. So I also very lucky that I managed to get the ticket. Yeah. So we can save the quarantine, can stay more time with my parents.
Because we want to meet our grandparents and she wants to meet our parents. I haven't gone to Malaysia since 2 years and she went last year.
I think a lot of my friends and family are waiting for me in Malaysia for me to go back. Pretty much I'm going to surprise most of them. A lot of them doesn't know I'm going back to Malaysia. It's going to be a huge surprise for them. It was actually pretty hard. I knew they were opening the ticket at 8 a.m. I even logged in around 7, but I did not get the ticket. I managed to get around 1 p.m. So around 5 to 6 hours. I had a lot of issues. The server was down, was under maintenance. So that's the issue I had. But finally I managed to get it. I didn't expect I would get the first bus also, actually. So I was pretty excited about that.
Some Singaporeans also took advantage of the land VTL to finally return home to visit, some after 2 years of not being able to do so.
I've been away for 1.5 years and I really miss home, and I'll be coming back to visit my family and friends, and definitely I miss the food here, you know, and it's great that I can bring my kids along, my family along. I'm a Singaporean who's staying in Malaysia for work, and my families are there. So I've been away for more than 10 years. And usually I'll come back during the Chinese New Year and Christmas.
And this is just the beginning. The land VTL will allow up to 1,440 citizens, permanent residents or long-term pass holders quarantine-free entry into each country on designated buses daily. PM Lee added today that the authorities aim to expand the VTL to general travellers by mid-December. Of course, bearing in mind the public health situation. Cheow Sue-Ann for the Straits Times.
One bus passenger travelling from Singapore has tested positive for COVID-19. The infection was detected through an on-arrival ART conducted at the Johor Causeway entry point. According to Malaysia's Health Minister Khairy Jamaluddin, this is exactly why pre-departure and on-arrival testing are in place, as positive cases are to be expected at points of entry. Singapore and Malaysia are aiming to expand this land VTL to general travellers from mid-December. Prime Minister Lee Hsien Loong announcing this in a joint press conference today with his Malaysian counterpart Ismail Sabri Yaakob. Discussions are also underway to pilot a sea VTL to allow Singapore cruise ships to call at Malaysian ports.
We aim to expand the VTL land also to include travelers, general travelers, that means not citizens and long-term residents, from mid-December onwards, taking into account the public health situation. I also discussed with the PM about a VTL-C and resuming port calls by Singapore cruise ships to Malaysian ports. And we agreed to work towards aligning safe cruise standards and start discussions on these matters, piloting port calls between Singapore and Malaysia, and also possible VTL to travel between Tanah Merah Terminal and Desaru in Johor.
Both leaders are also in talks on other areas of collaboration, including the Kuala Lumpur-Singapore high-speed rail, with Mr. Ismail suggesting reviving discussions on the terminated project. PM Lee says that Singapore is open to fresh proposals.
Construction is ongoing and we look forward to the RTS system commencing passenger service by the end of 2026. The Prime Minister and I also discussed the Singapore-Kuala Lumpur high-speed rail, and the Prime Minister suggested reviving discussions on the high-speed rail. I responded to the Prime Minister that Singapore and Malaysia had previously reached agreement to terminate the HSR project, and this had been amicably settled and closed. Nevertheless, Singapore is open to fresh proposals from Malaysia on the HSR project, and the two ministries of transport would discuss the matter, and Singapore looks forward to receiving more details from Malaysia so that we can study them and consider the matter again, starting from a clean slate.
Turning our attention to Changi Airport, where the first VTL flights from Kuala Lumpur have landed. Jetstar's 3K684 touching down at around 10 a.m. this morning. The airline also operated the first VTL flight out of Singapore, departing at 7:50 a.m. with 170 passengers on board. Meanwhile, the VTLs for Indonesia, India and Sweden also kicked off today as planned, but in an effort to reduce the risks of importing the OMICRON variant, Singapore has deferred the VTLs with Qatar, Saudi Arabia and the UAE. The World Health Organization saying today that the OMICRON variant is likely to spread internationally. Scientists are scrambling to gather data on the new variant, its capabilities and perhaps most importantly, how effective the current vaccines are against it. Based on early findings, the variant may be more transmissible and better able to evade the body's immune responses, both to vaccination and natural infection. Experts also say the COVID-19 vaccines may continue to ward off severe illness and death, and booster shots could be needed to protect most people. The makers of the two most effective vaccines, Pfizer and Moderna, are preparing to reformulate their shots if necessary, with Moderna's chief medical officer saying a new vaccine for OMICRON will be ready by early 2022. With more is David Allen, an Associate Professor from the Infectious Diseases Translational Research Program at NUS's Yong Lulin School of Medicine. Welcome back to the show, Professor. Professor, OMICRON has been classified as a variant of concern. What does this mean and how different is it from other variants of concern and interest that have emerged?
Thank you for having me. OMICRON has a variant of concern, which OMICRON has been designated, has genetic changes in it which predict that it will have increased ability to transmit among people. It may be more dangerous than other variants as far as causing disease, or it may escape immune defenses. It's also been found to be transmitted in more than one location, either multiple clusters and often in multiple countries. So from the WHO's perspective, who gave it the designation of variant concern, it has been shown to be more transmissible, and therefore it met its own criteria for what makes it a variant of concern. Its difference is that it has more mutations in the portion of the virus that attaches to human cells. as a consequence, that concerns folks about its ability to potentially evade vaccines. That's not been proven yet. It's also not been shown to cause increased virulence yet, only because we're a little early yet. But we've not seen signals that it is a more aggressive variant compared to the others, say compared to Beta, for instance.
And Professor, when would that, you talk about, it's still early stages. When would it become something that we should be concerned about, something that we should pay more close attention to?
Well, it depends on who's speaking. If you're a world or a global public health official, you need to be aware today. If you're a citizen in any of the countries of the world, your action can be make sure that I'm following the usual measures to protect myself, wearing my mask, socially distancing, washing my hands, and that I've been vaccinated, and if I'm eligible and it's appropriate to get a booster. Those are the things that can be done for the citizen day to day, regardless of whether a new variant is found or we're living with the prior existing variant.
Separately, PM Lee said yesterday that Singapore is tracking the OMICRON variant and may be forced to take step backs. What signs will experts be looking out for that could lead to a tightening of measures?
Well, I think what they'll be looking for initially to detect it, whether it finds its way, which it inevitably will, into our community, but we put in place steps to try to delay when that occurs. But the other things they'll be looking for is does it have an increased demand on the healthcare system? As you know, the healthcare systems in many countries are stressed, not necessarily overrun, but stressed. And so if there's additional stresses due to OMICRON, that's what would certainly be looked for. And the way it would stress is the healthcare system is more people require become symptomatic or have moderate to severe disease or critical disease or die. As you know, the vast majority of people who have Delta, for instance, the Delta variant, have only had very mild or asymptomatic disease, not requiring any extra needs from the healthcare system. But should OMICRON do such, then that would certainly be a signal to our public policy leaders to say we need to do something extra.
Thank you for your time and perspectives, Associate Professor David Allen from the Yong Lin School of Medicine at NUS. In the face of the OMICRON variant, some countries are shutting its borders again. For instance, from tomorrow, Japan will ban all new foreign arrivals. Prime Minister Fumio Kishida says that further quarantine restrictions would be imposed on arrivals from an additional 14 countries where the variant has been detected, without giving further details. Similarly, strict curbs in the Philippines as it suspends a move to allow entry for fully vaccinated tourists. No cases of the OMICRON strain has yet been detected in the Philippines, which remains largely unvaccinated. To speed up the vaccination process, a 3-day vaccination drive kicks off today, targeting 9 million people. Two badminton titles, 3 final appearances and beating high-ranked players along the way. Singapore shuttler Loh Kian Yew has had quite an eventful couple of months. Most recently, at last week's Indonesia Open, he scored a surprise win over world number 1 Kento Momota en route to the final, where he lost to world number 2 Victor Axelsen. Kian Yew reflects on his impressive run but says it's only going to get harder from here.
This tournament, it has been quite a good run. This whole week, I've played, I think I showed some consistency, and of course, beating Momota, although he wasn't at his best, I think I still managed to beat him, which I was quite happy about. But of course, next time, when he's not as tired as he is now, I think it's going to be a tougher game for sure. Moving forward, coming up, I have the World Championship in 2 weeks' time. Yeah, and then next year there'll be a few major games like the SEA Games, Commonwealth Games, Asian Games. Yeah, and of course after that Paris 2024. Everyone is going to be more prepared, and my video is out there. Everyone is going to analyze my game, so it's not going to be as easy as it seems. It's just going to get harder. So there's going to be a lot of challenges coming up, and I'll need to face them one by one and try my best to overcome them.
And those are our top stories for today. Visit straitstimes.com for more news and our YouTube channel for more videos. Subscribe by hitting the red button below. I'm Haryanto Diman. See you tomorrow on The Big Story.